Don't trust words, trust patterns. This isn't just a quote, it's your shield, your sword, and your silent wisdom when that message hits your phone. They'll text you, oh, they will, one day, one night, out of nowhere. It'll pop up like a ghost slipping back through a door you closed with tears and iron will. I miss you, they'll say. But don't let those 3 words fool you, my friend, because what you're about to hear will flip your whole understanding of what that message actually means, and more importantly, what to do when it finally comes. Hey folks, imagine this. You're a house, a beautiful, strong, warm house that once had an open door. They came in, they stayed for a while. Maybe they laughed, maybe they cried, maybe they trashed the place a little. But then they left. No warning, no explanation. They just walked out and slammed the door behind them. You spent months cleaning up the mess. You painted the walls with healing. You fixed the broken windows with strength. You found silence and made it sacred. And just when you light your final candle and sit down in peace, boom, knock knock. Hey, I miss you. But let's be real, folks. They don't miss the house. They miss the feeling, the comfort, the warmth they didn't have to earn. They miss how you made them feel, how you reflected their best side back to them like a mirror they didn't deserve. And now that you've boarded up the windows and changed the locks, now they remember? Nah, that ain't love. That's emotional convenience. My friends, let me break a lie right now. Just because someone remembers you doesn't mean they value you. Some people only return when the silence starts echoing in their own emptiness. Some people don't come back because they had a revelation. They come back because your absence became too loud. And I miss you is not always an invitation. It's sometimes a test of how far you've come and whether you're still vulnerable to the same emotional bait. So don't get caught in that trap. Don't let one message undo months of healing. You didn't fight your way out of emotional quicksand just to dive back in because someone learned how to type 3 words at 1:37 a.m. You're not a late-night thought. You're not a backup plan. You're not a just checking in after they've explored every other option. You are a whole damn force. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." So if your soul is soaked in peace now, don't let their message repaint it with confusion. You are not here to play emotional ping pong. You're here to protect your peace like it's royalty, because it is. And maybe it'll sting for a second. Maybe that part of your heart that remembers will ache. But your strength, it's in the pause, the moment you don't react, the moment you smile, shake your head, and say, "Not this time." That's growth. That's power. That's Stoicism in motion. So here's what I want you to do right now. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I protect my peace. Say it like you mean it. Write it like a contract, because when they text, "I miss you," you're not replying with weakness. You're responding with silence or standards or both. Hit that like button if this already lit something inside you. Subscribe right now if you know deep down that your story is about to shift. Because in this video, we're not begging for texts. We're not waiting on ghosts. We're standing tall in truth. Stay with me. It's about to get real. Number 1. Why they text when you go silent. He who angers you controls you. Epictetus didn't say this to sound poetic. He said it because when someone once held power over your emotions, they didn't need chains. They used your reaction, your availability, your constant yes. And when you stop offering that, when you go silent, they panic, not out of love, but out of loss of control. They'll text "I miss you," not when they realize your worth, but when your silence gets too loud for their ego to ignore. Think about it. A fire only misses the match when the cold sets in. And you, my friend, were the warmth. You were the emotional thermostat they could control at will. But now, Now you've unplugged the system, you've left the building, you've reclaimed the remote control to your own peace, and suddenly they feel the freeze. Imagine this: you're a lighthouse, strong, steady, shining into the dark waves, and for a while they used your light to navigate their chaos. They didn't dock, they didn't build, they just passed through again and again, using your glow to guide their nights. But the moment you shut that light off, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation, they crashed. Not because they loved the lighthouse, but because they relied on its glow without ever respecting its power. So now they text, "I miss you." And in your head, questions swirl. Is this real? Do they mean it this time? Should I answer? Could this be different? But pause, because here's the truth they'll never say. They don't always miss you. They miss your reaction. They miss knowing that whenever they needed reassurance, they could ping you like a vending machine. And when that silence hits them like a locked door they once walked through freely, their ego, not their heart, starts dialing. And I get it. That part of you still wants to believe, still hopes it's love finally arriving in the way you always wanted. That maybe your absence made them wake up, that maybe silence rewired their soul. But most of the time, it doesn't. Silence doesn't change the selfish. It only threatens them. It makes them uncomfortable, because silence doesn't answer their questions. And silence, true, calm, unbothered silence, reminds them that they're no longer in control. This is why it's so hard for you. Because you're not just fighting their message, you're fighting your old patterns. The pattern that says, be kind, give them a chance, don't be cold. What if they've changed? But let's break that lie. Kindness isn't weakness, but boundaries are strength. You can be loving and still not reply. You can be healed and still choose silence. In fact, that might be the loudest proof of your growth. People think Stoicism is cold, that silence is cruelty. But listen to what Marcus Aurelius said. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That text? It's an outside event. Your response? That's your domain. That's your temple. That's your empire. You don't owe access to anyone who couldn't handle you when your heart was wide open. You don't owe replies to those who only remember your name when loneliness punches them in the chest. They're not checking on you. They're checking if you still bleed when they tap the old wound. And here's what's wild. The stronger you become, the more tempted they are to test it. Because you're not who you were when they left. You're not the emotional sponge soaking up their inconsistency. You're not the lighthouse left burning for someone who never docked. You're no longer the house with the open door and no rules. Now you've got a gate. Now you've got standards. Now you've got peace that didn't come easy. And you're not handing it over for 3 words and a dopamine ping at 1 a.m. So yes, they'll text. Yes, they'll say they miss you. But what they really miss is the version of you who didn't know better. And that version doesn't live here anymore. Let them text. Let them wonder. Let them feel the weight of your silence. Because silence isn't absence. It's presence with boundaries. Silence isn't cold. It's a decision not to engage in old fires that already burned you once. Silence is the wisdom you earned through nights crying alone, through days of self-reflection, through months of unlearning the belief that love means self-abandonment. And now, my friend, you don't chase, you don't explain, you don't rush to respond to, I miss you. You let it sit, you let it echo, you let it reveal whether it was love or control. Because the real test isn't if they come back, it's if you stay still when they do. Can you breathe through the message? Can you recognize the difference between emotional manipulation and genuine change? Can you choose peace over patterns? You've come too far to go back. You've seen too much. You've rebuilt yourself, brick by brick, in silence. And now they feel that. They feel your power. That's why they text. So today, here's your affirmation. Say it. Write it. Drop it in the comments so the world knows. My silence is my strength. Say it again. My silence is my strength. Stay with me. Number 2, they're not missing you. They're missing the mirror. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Now flip that. When someone leaves, believe what their absence says louder than any apology that might show up later. Because when they come back and say, I miss you, it's not always about you. It's not about your heart, your soul, your love. Sometimes it's about the mirror, the one you held up so clearly they couldn't stand to look into it. You were their mirror. You reflected truth. You didn't sugarcoat. You gave them something real, your presence, your emotional labor, your consistency. You showed them who they really were when they were with you, and that's not always easy to face. Most people don't want growth, they want comfort. And the moment your reflection forced them to see their own emotional immaturity, their wounds, their avoidance, they pulled away. Not because you were too much, but because you made them feel things they weren't ready to heal. But now they text. Now they say, I miss you. And you wonder, do they mean it? Is this the closure you prayed for at 3 a.m.? The reconciliation you played out in your head like a movie scene you never got to live? Let's slow that down. When they say, I miss you, it's often not about depth. It's about memory, the memory of how you made them feel about themselves. Not in a way that challenged them, in a way that centered them. You gave them warmth without demand, understanding without limits, support without pressure. That's rare. And now that your silence has set in, now that the mirror is gone, they crave it again. Not because they've become someone better, but because they miss seeing their best self reflected back, even if it was a lie. Imagine this. Someone walks into a room with a cracked mirror. Every time they glance at it, they're forced to see the flaw, the imperfection, the broken line that runs across their face. It's uncomfortable. They look away. That mirror, you, wasn't broken. It was honest, and honest reflection is terrifying for someone not ready to grow. So they walk out, and for a while they surround themselves with foggy mirrors. People who flatter, who agree, who tell them what they want to hear. But eventually, it doesn't work. Because deep down, the truth is louder than noise. And now, when they're alone, when no one's around to stroke the ego, they remember you. The mirror, the one that didn't lie, the one that made them face themselves. And that's when the message comes. But don't confuse remembering with respecting. Don't confuse missing you with deserving you. There's a reason mirrors are covered in houses during mourning. It's hard to face yourself when loss is in the air. And now, you are the loss. And they want that mirror uncovered, not to admire you, but to see themselves again. That's why this is so dangerous. Because I miss you can feel so personal, so heartfelt, so overdue. But it can be one of the most selfish things a person ever says. It's not a gift, it's a test. To see if you'll shine the light again, to see if you'll hold up the mirror once more and let them feel validated without doing the work. And you've done enough emotional heavy lifting for someone who ran the moment the weight got real. Let's break the lie right here. Missing you doesn't mean they've changed. It means they miss who they got to be around you. They miss the emotional validation you gave them. They miss the way your energy calmed their chaos, the way your wisdom stabilized their confusion, the way your heart gave them a safe place to land after they lit their own life on fire. But here's the truth, friend. You are not a mirror for broken people to glance at and run. You are not a canvas for someone else's projection. You are not therapy for the emotionally lazy. You are whole. You are worthy, and your reflection should only be reserved for those brave enough to face it and stay. And maybe, deep down, you're still hoping this message is different, hoping the words carry weight this time, that the tone is softer, that maybe they've done the work. But words are cheap, reflections don't lie. So ask yourself, does their message reflect growth or just absence? Is it grounded in accountability or triggered by loneliness? Are they reaching out because they truly miss you, or because they miss the emotional upgrade they got for free while treating you like a backup plan? You can love someone deeply and still realize they are not safe to be close to. You can remember the good and still protect yourself from the bad. And when they say, "I miss you," you're allowed to pause, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. You're allowed to stay silent, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. This is hard, this is real, but it's also freedom. Because once you see what "I miss you" often really means, you start to value your silence more than their attention. You start to understand that missing someone doesn't obligate you to respond. You learn that love without self-respect is just codependence wrapped in fantasy. Let this moment be your power, not your test. Let it be your truth, not your trigger. You held up the mirror once, and they flinched. That's not your failure, that's their fear. And now your job is not to dim your light or soften your reflection. Your job is to stay in your truth, stay in your peace, and protect what you've built. If they really want back in, let them face themselves first. Let them earn the mirror, not with a text, not with a compliment, but with consistency, humility, and real growth. Until then, you keep walking. You keep growing, you keep shining, and I want you to drop this in the comments as a declaration to yourself and the world. I am not your mirror. Say it with your chest. Say it for your peace. Because you don't exist to reflect someone else's image. You exist to embody your own. Now breathe and stay with me. We're about to go even deeper. Number 3. They miss the comfort, not the commitment. Love is not what you say. Love is what you do. And if there's one truth they'll never admit when they text you, it's this. They don't miss the responsibility that came with loving you. They miss the emotional comfort, the emotional room service, the way you were always there without asking them to grow. They don't want the whole meal. They want a free taste without paying the bill. Let's not play pretend. When someone says, "I miss you," it hits deep. It stirs up the memories, the what-ifs, the old warmth you thought you buried. But what they really miss isn't always you. It's how you made them feel safe, important, heard, validated, all without having to meet you at the same depth. And now that you've pulled that comfort away, now that your energy is no longer theirs on demand, they feel cold, not lonely, uncomfortable. Think of it like this. You were a fireplace, always lit, warm, reliable. They could come close when they needed heat, then walk away when the fire got too hot, too real. They didn't gather the wood. They didn't tend the flame. They just stood near it and soaked in what you built. And now that you've boarded it up, now that the flame is no longer open for them to bask in, they whisper back, "I miss you." No, they miss the warmth, not the work. People often confuse presence with partnership. They remember how you showed up, how you stayed when they were difficult, how you listened even when they were silent. And now they want that presence again. But here's the catch. They still don't want the responsibility that comes with keeping you. It's easy to miss someone who made you feel whole without demanding your own wholeness. But that's not love. That's emotional dependence. And that kind of missing, it's hollow. It doesn't build. It just takes. This is where you've got to pause and ask yourself the question they hope you never will. Do they miss me, or do they miss the emotional service I provided? because the two are not the same. You see, folks miss convenience. They miss having someone in their corner who asked nothing in return, but gave everything. They miss not being held accountable while still feeling adored. That's not love. That's comfort wrapped in selfishness. And when you take that away, when you reclaim your time, your energy, your heart, they feel the withdrawal like an addict cut off from their favorite drug. You were their calm in chaos, their certainty when everything else was noise. But when it came time to choose you, to show up for you, to carry even half of what you carried, they disappeared, ghosted, fumbled, chose silence. And now that you've found your footing again, now that you're not chasing, calling, overthinking, hoping, they suddenly miss you. No, they miss the version of you that tolerated imbalance. They miss the emotional security blanket. They miss the unconditional presence they took for granted. But they still don't want to earn you. They just want to feel good again at your expense. It's not easy to accept. It's not easy to admit that someone you loved deeply never loved you the same way, that they loved the feeling, not the person, that they were in love with the idea of being loved, but never ready to actually love back. And maybe you're sitting there right now, reading this, wondering, but what if they've changed? What if they realized? What if this message means more? And look, maybe, people can change. But real change shows up in actions, not emotional breadcrumbs. Real change comes with apology, accountability, consistent effort, not just a text saying, "I miss you," sent from the same comfort they still hope to crawl back into without earning it. You have to understand the difference between hunger and value. Just because someone's starving doesn't mean they value what they're eating. Sometimes they just don't like the feeling of being empty. And you're not a snack. You're not fast food for the emotionally lazy. You're a feast built on years of wisdom, depth, and emotional investment. You're not here to feed someone who only shows up when they're hungry, but never when you're empty. They want you back because they remember how good it felt to be near you. But do they remember how badly they made you feel when you needed them? Do they remember the silence, the gaslighting, the distance they created? Or are they just remembering the cozy feelings you gave them and skipping the part where they actually had to show up for you? This is where your clarity becomes your shield. This is where your self-worth becomes your filter. Because if you let them back in on nothing but nostalgia, you're teaching them that their comfort still outweighs your healing. And if you take the bait again, they'll learn that all they need to do is vanish, wait, and say, "I miss you," to regain access. No, not this time. Not this version of you. You've upgraded. You've healed. You've stopped being someone's emotional hotel where they can check in, rest, and leave without paying the cost of commitment. You're not comfort on demand anymore. You're not soft love for hard hearts. You're not peace for someone who brought you storms. So let them say what they want. Let them send their message. Let them remember. But you remember more. You remember the work it took to rebuild yourself. You remember the nights you almost responded. The days you stared at your phone, hoping they'd come back with the right words. You remember how it felt to be invisible in the relationship while still showing up like you mattered. And now that you've climbed out of that emotional pit, now that you've found your footing, now that you've built peace with your own hands, you don't trade that for someone who only wants comfort, not commitment. Say this out loud, write it in the comments, etch it into your soul. I am not your comfort zone. Say it again. I am not your comfort zone. You are not a pit stop on someone else's emotional road trip. You are not an old hoodie they wear when the world gets cold. You are a force, a choice, a standard, a boundary wrapped in healing. And the next time they say, "I miss you," you'll hear it for what it really is. A reminder that your silence was louder than their love. Stay grounded, stay firm, stay tuned. We're going deeper. Number 4, they don't want you back. They want access. A fool thinks himself to be wise, but a wise man knows himself to be a fool. And when they text you out of nowhere, whispering, "I miss you," make no mistake, it's not always about regret. It's often about strategy, access, testing the door to see if it's still unlocked. Not because they suddenly understand your worth, but because they're uncomfortable being locked out of your peace. Let's not dress it up. Let's call it what it is, emotional reconnaissance. They're not texting from a place of healing. They're texting from a place of curiosity. Do I still have access to you? That's what that message really means. Not "I've changed." Not "I'm ready to give what you deserve." Just, "Can I still get in?" Imagine your heart is a gated sanctuary. It used to be open access. Anyone could walk in, take what they wanted, leave their footprints, maybe even damage the place. And you? You kept rebuilding, cleaning up the mess, leaving the gate open out of hope, out of habit, out of emotional hunger. But now you've locked it, put up boundaries, built a garden instead of a battlefield, and that silence, the one they used to mistake for weakness, is now roaring through their world like a storm they didn't prepare for. And in that silence, they reach for the gate. "I miss you," they say, but it's not a key. It's a knock, a test. They don't want the responsibility of entering your life again. They just want to know they can. Because here's what most people won't tell you. People don't always return when they're healed. They return when your energy is no longer freely available, when your attention is no longer validating their ego, when your emotional labor, once taken for granted, is suddenly scarce. Scarcity makes even the ungrateful curious. And that's when they crawl back. They don't want the full version of you. They want fragments, bits, the part that made them feel powerful. The version of you that replied quickly, that over-explained, that sent paragraphs in return to one-word answers, that asked, "Are you okay?" when they pulled away, instead of saying, "This isn't healthy." They're not after love, they're after the access they once abused. This is where your silence becomes sacred, because silence is not passive, it's powerful, it's a boundary, it's saying, "I'm no longer a place you can just visit when you're bored, lonely, or looking for validation." You see, access is not affection, and emotional proximity is not love. When someone texts you out of the blue, it's not always because they've transformed, it's because your distance created a void in their life, not because they're ready to show up for yours. And what hurts is you'll want to believe it's genuine. You'll want to believe they finally see you, that the space changed them, that maybe this is the breakthrough moment where they return with full clarity, full effort, full heart. But often that message isn't built on clarity, it's built on discomfort, their discomfort, with silence, with being ignored, with realizing that their grip on you is fading. This is psychological, it's not romantic. They're trying to see if the bond still exists, if they still have emotional power, if you'll still light up when they throw you a spark. And the moment you do, the moment you reply, they know, they still have access. And the cycle begins again. Let me break this illusion right now. If someone genuinely values you, they won't test your gates with vague texts. They'll show up with presence, with honesty, with an apology, not a check-in, with consistency, not curiosity, with action, not ambiguity. "I miss you," with no context, no change, no explanation, no accountability. That's not affection. That's entitlement dressed up as nostalgia. You don't owe them a reaction. You don't owe them reassurance. You don't owe them access just because they remembered your name when their phone got quiet. And maybe a part of you still aches, still wonders, still holds on to the idea that people return when they're ready. But some people don't return out of readiness. They return out of habit. And if you're not careful, you'll confuse familiarity with love. You'll mistake presence for effort. You'll interpret their curiosity as commitment, and it's not. Real love doesn't knock once and walk away when you don't answer. Real love stays at the gate and says, "I know I messed up. I'll be right here until I prove otherwise." But "I miss you" with no follow-up, no accountability. That's not a romantic gesture. It's a digital echo, a noise from the past hoping to reopen doors it once slammed. You're not a doormat. You're not a safe house for emotional trespassers. You're not a revolving door for people who only value you when you're gone. So when that message comes, and it will, pause, breathe, ask yourself, do I feel seen or just summoned? Is this message about love or about control? Does this invitation bring peace or disrupt it? And if the answer shakes your peace, you already know what to do, because access is a privilege, not a given, not anymore, not after what you've rebuilt, not after the silence that taught you strength, not after the loneliness that introduced you to your own company, not after the sleepless nights where you finally figured out you were enough, even if they never saw it. So when they say, "I miss you," and you're tempted to fall back into old habits, stop and ask, do they want me, or do they want the version of me who didn't know better? Because that version is gone. That version grew. That version turned pain into power, and power doesn't respond to games disguised as gestures. Your peace is not public property. Your time is not available to the unaccountable. And your heart is not a hotel for half-hearted people. Say it in the comments. Say it to yourself. Say it out loud if you need to. Access is earned. Again, access is earned. Not begged, not borrowed, not assumed. Earned. And until it is, keep the gate closed, keep the standard high, keep the silence sacred, because you are no longer reacting to energy that disrespected your presence. You are protecting the peace they never thought you'd find without them, and that's the part they really miss. Number 5, they're hungry, not healing. Don't feed it. You become what you tolerate. Let that land. Because every time you respond to a half-hearted message with a full-hearted reply, you're telling the universe that you're still available to be half-loved, half-seen, half-respected. And those who only show up when they're hungry for comfort, not when you're starving for partnership, will keep coming back. Not to nourish you, but to feed off the emotional warmth you built all by yourself. So when that "I miss you" message drops in your inbox like a spark trying to reignite a fire they let burn out, pause. Ask yourself, are they really healing? Or are they just hungry? Because there's a difference. A person who's healing comes with responsibility, with ownership, with changed behavior. A person who's hungry just wants a quick fix. They don't care if it's temporary. They don't care if it costs you your peace. They just want to feel something again, and they remember you as the last person who made them feel whole, even when they were giving you pieces. But you're not a meal for the emotionally malnourished. You're not a pit stop for the love-starved. You are a full-course feast that now only serves those who show up with consistency, care, and contribution. It's wild how silence triggers the same people who told you to stop overreacting, who said you were too emotional, too needy, too intense. Now they miss you. Now they realize what they lost. No, they realize what they can't reach anymore. And there's a big difference between regret and withdrawal. One is rooted in love. The other is a symptom of entitlement. Let's be clear, if they truly cared, they would have stayed. They would have grown. They would have chosen you, not just when you were glowing, but when you were healing, when you were silent, when you were standing your ground, instead of begging to be seen. But now they're not coming back with an apology. They're coming back with appetite. And you used to feed it. You did. Don't lie to yourself. You gave them space, energy, time, explanations, reassurance, softness. You justified their behavior. You filled the gaps they never tried to close. You became their emotional fireplace in a house they refused to help build. So of course they miss you. You were their emotional buffet, and now the restaurant is closed. But here's the truth they're not saying. They never brought anything to the table. They sat down, they devoured, they left. And now they want to come back because they're hungry again, not because they've changed. And you've started feeding yourself. That's what scares them. You've learned to enjoy your own company. You've started making peace your priority. You've gone days, weeks even, without needing their validation, and they feel that. It shakes them, because they always counted on your hunger. They just never thought you'd stop being hungry for them. This is where the real test begins. When they message you, your heart might skip, your chest might ache. You might feel that urge rise. Maybe they mean it this time, maybe this is real, but that's not your soul speaking. That's the old version of you, the version that thought love meant sacrifice, the version that thought if you just loved them harder, they'd eventually learn how to love you back. That version served people who only took. That version over-explained to people who under-delivered. That version would have answered right away with, "I miss you too." But not this version. This version doesn't starve anymore. This version doesn't settle for crumbs. This version doesn't mistake a 2 a.m. "I miss you" for emotional maturity. This version sees the pattern and chooses to break it. Because emotional starvation is not love, and you don't heal by feeding old habits. Let's say they do miss you. Let's say the message was sincere. Even then, what are they offering now? Comfort or commitment? Change or charm? Is it depth or just damage control? Don't confuse longing with love. Some people miss the idea of you, the access, the effect, the feeling of being desired. They miss the way you loved them in a way they never earned. But that doesn't mean they're ready. That doesn't mean they're safe. Real love isn't hunger, it's presence. It shows up when it matters. It does the work. It doesn't just crave your light. It comes with its own matchstick. And here's what nobody tells you. The more you feed someone out of your emptiness, the more they expect it. The more you explain, fix, chase, validate, the less they learn how to show up for you. You can't teach someone how to love you by abandoning yourself. That's not healing. That's self-betrayal. You want to know if it's real? Watch what they do when you don't respond. When you pause. When you don't jump at the bait. That's when the mask slips. That's when the true motive reveals itself. Because the one whose healing will understand your silence. They'll respect your boundaries. They'll keep showing up. The one who's just hungry will disappear again once they realize the emotional kitchen is closed. So when you feel that pull to reply, slow down. Breathe. Ask yourself, is this love or is this just appetite? Am I being seen or am I being used again? Does this serve my peace or just their pattern? Because your energy is expensive now, your heart is premium, your peace is sacred, and you no longer hand that out to anyone who shows up empty-handed and emotionally hungry. Say this with me. Say it in your room. Say it in the comments. Say it to your reflection. I don't feed what starved me. Say it again, louder, stronger, rooted. I don't feed what starved me. Because your healing wasn't a fluke. Your growth wasn't a phase. Your silence wasn't a punishment. It was preservation. It was wisdom. It was becoming. Let them miss you. Let them wonder. Let them sit in their hunger. But you keep nourishing yourself because you are not who they left. You are not what they remember. You are someone who no longer feeds those who only show up with an empty plate. Number 6. The real test isn't their text, it's your response. It is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of their significance. Epictetus said that, and if you've ever received a late night "I miss you" text from someone who once vanished like smoke, you know exactly what he meant. Because the real earthquake isn't the message they send, it's the meaning your mind attaches to it. The story your heart tries to rewrite, the way your fingers hesitate above the keyboard, trembling between old hope and new strength. They text you. Simple, short, 3 words. I miss you. And in that moment, your entire healing is on the line. Not because of their presence, but because of the power you give it. That message, it's not the test. You are. You are the one being measured, not by them, but by you. By the version of yourself you've become, by the inner boundaries you built brick by brick in the dark, because silence isn't just a strategy, it's a sanctuary, and now someone's knocking. The real question is, do they deserve to be let in? See, people think the test is whether someone comes back. It's not. Anyone can come back. Ghosts come back. Regret comes back. Boredom definitely comes back. But the real test is how you respond once they do. Not in words, but in energy, in boundaries, in discipline. You know what happens next. Your heart jumps. Your brain lights up with old memories. The dopamine trickles in like it used to. You think, maybe this means something. Maybe they've finally realized. That's not a feeling. That's your nervous system responding to a familiar high. And familiarity, my friend, is not love. It's a loop, one you've broken, or at least you're trying to. Because when someone texts you out of the blue, they're not just bringing words. They're bringing a wave that wants to pull you back into the sea you barely survived. The same sea you almost drowned in. The late night waiting, the breadcrumb hope, the mental gymnastics of wondering if they cared. And now here they are, floating back in on a message, hoping you'll forget how hard it was to breathe when they left. And your old self? It wants to reply. Not even out of desire, but out of muscle memory, out of that ache for closure, that craving for resolution, that little whisper that says, maybe this time it's different. But different doesn't just say different, it acts different, consistently, repeatedly, with clarity. And if you have to wonder what this message means, then it doesn't carry the intention it should. Love doesn't make you guess. Healing doesn't sneak in the back door. Growth doesn't disguise itself in 3 vague words at midnight. This is your test, not theirs. Not whether they press send, but whether you stay grounded in everything you've built since they left. Think about the nights you spent replaying conversations in your head, the mornings you woke up with anxiety sitting on your chest like a boulder, the way you tried to fix what wasn't yours to fix, the way you apologized just to keep the peace. You didn't survive all that just to let someone test the waters with another "just thinking about you" message. They don't get to poke at your peace, not now, not when you've turned silence into strength, not when you've learned to love your own company more than their chaos, not when your healing has finally started to feel like home. This isn't about bitterness, it's about clarity. You're not angry they texted. You're aware of what it represents. That's the difference. You've matured past the need to make everything emotional. Now you evaluate it logically, philosophically, stoically. They texted. That's it. That's all that happened. A message, words, pixels. It only becomes powerful when you give it weight. It only becomes a storm when you open the door and let it in. Remember this. You owe no one access to the place they left for dead. Your heart isn't a revolving door for ghosts who want to feel alive again. Your peace isn't a sandbox for someone who once kicked over everything you tried to build. And your silence isn't empty. It's sacred. It's your proof of growth. It's your proof of mastery. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." You don't control that message. You don't control who sends it, but you control how you interpret it. You control what it touches, how deep it reaches, and whether or not it shakes the foundation you've built. It's tempting, I know, to reply, to explain, to prove you're okay, to say, "I've moved on," in a way that still seeks validation. But when you respond from that place, you're not responding from power. You're reacting from the residue of your old wounds. And wounds don't heal when you pick at them. They heal when you protect them. So let the message sit. Let it breathe. Let it be what it is, a signal, not a solution. They're signaling discomfort, signaling loneliness, signaling uncertainty. That doesn't mean you need to decode it. It doesn't mean you need to fix it. It definitely doesn't mean you need to sacrifice your stability just to be the bigger person. This is your moment, not to prove your worth to them, but to prove your worth to yourself. Because self-worth isn't measured in who texts you, it's measured in who you no longer feel the need to respond to. Say this to yourself, and if it hits home, say it in the comments. Loud, clear, decided. My response is my power. Not the message, not their words, not the timing. Your response, the pause, the restraint, the silence, the awareness. That is power, that is wisdom, that is healing in motion. This is your test. Pass it in peace. Number 7. They always say, "I miss you," when you no longer need to hear it. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca. That's what this is, isn't it? A game between your memory and your healing, between the past that still whispers and the present that no longer begs to be understood. They always come back. They always say, "I miss you," when you've finally stopped checking your phone, when your mind no longer spins stories about what could have been, when you've stopped romanticizing the wreckage and started building something new without them in the blueprint. It's twisted, isn't it? The way they sense your peace, as if silence sends a signal stronger than a scream, as if the moment you release them energetically, something inside them wakes up, not from love, but from discomfort. They don't come back because they've had an epiphany. They come back because the space you left behind is louder than any words you ever said. They say, "I miss you," because you're no longer predictable, no longer available, no longer orbiting their emotional gravity. You've gone still, detached, centered, and that threatens the control they once had. Because let's be real, when you needed to hear those words the most, they were nowhere. When you were falling apart in silence, they were living like you didn't exist. And now that you've pulled yourself up from the floor, now that you glow differently, now they remember, "No, my friend, that's not love. That's loss." From their side, loss of access, loss of control, loss of comfort. They remember not who you were, but what you gave. And that memory doesn't taste like regret. It tastes like ego craving another bite of the person who once fed it without question. But this time is different. You're different. Because the version of you that waited, that version died in the fire they lit with their absence. The version of you that overanalyzed every word, every silence, every shift in tone, that version exhausted itself chasing meaning in chaos. And you finally learned, some texts don't deserve replies. Some people don't deserve return access. Some stories aren't supposed to get a second chapter. They're supposed to be finished, closed, put down, so you can write your own. They said, "I miss you," but what they meant was, "I miss what you did for me. I miss how safe I felt near you. I miss how I didn't have to change, and you still stayed." That's not a compliment. That's a confession, and you're not here to be someone's emotional security blanket just because they finally noticed the cold. Healing teaches you this. Closure doesn't come from the words you've been waiting to hear. It comes from not needing them anymore. It comes from knowing that even if they say everything perfectly, it still wouldn't be enough. Because you no longer run on fantasy. You run on truth. And truth says, if they truly valued you, they never would have let it get to this point. Let that settle. The heart you had back then, it was open, pure, forgiving. It gave them chances they never earned, grace they never respected. But that heart, it learned. It didn't harden, it wised up. And now you hear, I miss you. And instead of melting, you pause, you assess, you breathe. You don't react like you used to, because now you know. I miss you isn't a door opening, it's a test. A test to see if you still bleed in the same places. A test to see if your silence was just noise or if it was transformation. They don't expect the new you, the grounded you, the you that no longer needs their presence to feel whole. And when you don't reply, or when you do, but with boundaries, they'll feel something they never expected, rejection. Not because you're being cruel, but because for the first time, you're choosing you. Not the past, not the comfort, not the craving, you. And that's where the power lives. In the moment you realize you no longer need to be chosen by someone who left you unchosen for so long. You no longer need their message to validate your worth. Because you've finally given that validation to yourself. You're not the same. You don't fold when they return. You don't crave what once broke you. You've seen too much. You've felt too deeply. You've risen too high. And now you get to walk away, not with pain, but with peace. So let them say it. Let them type it. Let them miss you. But don't you miss who you used to be with them. Don't you shrink to fit the old version of yourself just to soothe someone who never showed up when you needed them. You've outgrown that space. You've surpassed that storyline. You're in a new chapter now, one where your silence speaks louder than their delayed words, one where I miss you doesn't shake you. It confirms how far you've come, because they'll always text, I miss you. But the real victory is when you don't need to hear it anymore. Now, if you're still with me, still standing in that strength, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments like a final exhale, because this is your closure now, not theirs. I've moved on without needing their apology. Let the world see it. Let you see it. Because it's not just a sentence, it's your new standard, your reminder that you're done living in emotional rewind. You're done decoding texts that should have come months ago. You're done bending for people who only come back when your glow threatens their shadow. You're not who they remember. And now, you never will be again.